From Knockabout Media, I'm Ryan Barnett, and this is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood North. Now that we've concluded our series on the life and work of John Candy, I'll be bringing you a couple of bonus episodes. These are shows outside of our usual narrative podcast format, but I think they add to our story. Today, we're looking at John Candy's movie career. Borrowing from Sean Fennessy and Amanda Dobbins over at the Big Picture podcast, we're going through John's entire filmography, some 40-plus films, and whittling them down to 10 essential titles. That's right, it's the John Candy Hall of Fame, here on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood North. Joining me for this conversation, I have two John Candy experts. The first is Tracey Morgan, author of Searching for Candy, a John Candy biography, as well as Those Aren't Pillows, a fan's guide to planes, trains, and automobiles, and The A to Z of John Candy, an illustrated guide. We also have Joe Ramoni, Philadelphia-based writer and filmmaker, host of Almost Cult Classics, the podcast, and the YouTube channel Hats Off Entertainment. Joe also provided feature commentaries for two new Blu-ray releases of Uncle Buck and Summer Rental. Tracey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So, as I said at the beginning, John Candy made 40-plus films. I think I was maybe able to touch on a dozen, maybe 15 to 20 of them in our series. Both of you have spent a considerable amount of time. Tracey, you did a whole book on John Candy plus a few extra pieces. Joe, by my count, you've done 10 or so video essays on the work of John Candy on Hats Off Entertainment.
Yeah, and I just want to say at the start, Tracey and I actually have been in touch since the very start of me doing those videos. She's been a great resource and a great friend and always sharing that work. So thank you, Tracey. You've always sent me copies of your books. I love them. It's nice to finally connect with you and do something with you because you've been such a champion of John's legacy and life, and I'm really happy to be doing it with you.
Joe, absolutely back at you. Thank you so much. And the work that you do is phenomenal.
Thank you.
And people just love the documentaries that you do. The Uncle Buck stuff especially, I absolutely love. And I'll be using parts of it, and crediting you in a book that I'm writing at the moment. So, you're doing great work. Thank you so much.
I love how much you're able to mine out of John's life in terms of creative work. It's so inspiring. Yeah,
he's just that brilliant person, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got a lot to give still. Yeah.
I wonder, I thought it might be interesting to start with a little bit about our individual connections to John Candy. I thought maybe, Tracey, I've talked in the past. We did this about a year ago, I think, when I first started working on the series. You have an interesting journey in terms of how you came around to deciding to write a biography of John Candy. Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it short. I was always a massive fan of John when I was growing up. I think my introduction was Brewster's Millions and Splash. And if I wanted to hang out with my brother, I needed to watch those films because he used to watch a lot of them on repeat. And I just absolutely fell in love with John because who doesn't? And sort of fast forward to I'm about 30 years of age. I've had a few health issues. Things aren't going great. And I start struggling really badly with depression to the point where I take 12 months off work. And I don't really know what my life is going to hold for me anymore. And as well as going down the medication, the therapy route, all those sort of things, I try to tap into some nostalgia from my past where, it makes you feel better, makes you feel good, takes you back to a nicer time. You can forget about things just for, an hour and a half or whatever it tends to be. And a lot of that was John Candy movies, and I went and revisited them. And I was like, okay, I love John. I've always loved John, but this is reminding me just how much, and I need to know more. I need to learn more about him. And there was one book written about him by a better writer than I called Martin Neilman. And I read the book and I just felt it was a bit mean-spirited. And it just wasn't quite what I wanted as a fan. And I must have been out of my mind at the time because I've never written a book before. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to do that. And the problem is when you tell people you're going to do that, you actually then have to do it. So, and then I just, I'd loved him anyway, but just learning so much about him and interviewing people that had worked with him and friends and colleagues, you just fall in love with him even more. He was everything you wanted him to be and more. So that's kind of like a short version, really.
I remember asking you this in the past, but did you find, when I read Martin's book, I get a sense that
people were reticent to share about John.
Yes.
And I don't know. I wonder if that has some sort of connection to, you know, what happened with Wired and John Belushi and like those kind of, it being kind of the same circle of friends and not kind of wanting to go down that same road. Did you come across any of that kind of reticence to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Not from everybody, and I think Martin was trying to write it quite shortly after John had passed, so everybody was still really grieving. Anyone that was close to him, it was still very, very raw. So I think they thought, oh, is he doing it because he just wants to chase the money? To be honest, and they were a bit sort of skeptical of him. And I did find some people were like, well, they wouldn't speak to Martin because I don't think I don't want to say too much, but I don't think Martin and John got on too well.
I believe Martin's career was as a Toronto critic, I believe. Didn't he work for the Toronto Stars?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And I don't think he was always particularly nice, but he's a critic. That's his job, I guess, you know. But certainly after Wired, the John Belushi biography, I know Dan Aykroyd and Judy Belushi put hours and hours and hours of time into that, being interviewed. And when it came out, it was just the dark side of John and the drug side of his life. And they just felt completely betrayed, really. And I think after that, everyone just went, we've got to be so careful because we think we're doing the right thing by our friends and we're not. Yeah. So certainly from that point, I think the thing that did help me was my name's Tracey Morgan, and a lot of people that I got, I think probably thought I was the Tracey Morgan, which I'm, and they got a bit of a shock when they got me, but you know.
I will say vocally, you have very similar voices, so it's an easy mistake.
I think so. Yeah, and I try and have the same hair and, you know, dress the similar and so. But yeah.
And what about you, Joe? How did your journey into John Candy fandom and then John Candy profession begin?
Well, I think like a lot of us, we discovered John Candy movies, at least some of them as children. And I think kids respond to John Candy, especially when we're at a young age like that. And movies like Uncle Buck, you respond so much because John feels like in those roles that he's talking directly to you. And you sense there that he understands you and your perspective as a kid, which you don't typically get from comedy movies that were targeted to adults. So from the very beginning of watching some of those movies, like I think Uncle Buck was probably the first one, there's just something there that makes you easily fall in love with John that you don't get with other performers. And maybe that's part of the heart that he puts into his roles. And maybe that's just, there's something there that makes it very easy to fall in love with his movies. And it's a love that's just continued to grow and develop. And the more I've discovered about him and learned about him, that love has just, love is not a big enough word, as he says in Planes, Trains. It's, you just continually find new things to appreciate about him and his career. And even the movies that were received negatively, you when you look beyond the surface, you find that these were projects that John was really passionate about, and some of them he really wanted to make the best they can be, but there were other factors and studio interference and recuts and a lot of stuff like that help you kind of sympathize with this guy that was just really just trying to do the best that he could do, even though sometimes the projects failed him. But it's been great. And then when you become an adult, you find new things to relate to in his roles. Like I think there's that scene in Uncle Buck where he's drinking with the dog and he's kind of monologuing about that. And it's just, the older you get, the more it's like, wow, like he really captures that anxiety and stress that comes from living a carefree kind of lifestyle, then transitioning into maybe something a bit more serious when your friends and family around you start to settle down. I mean, he really captures those emotions.
Yeah. Well said. For me, I mean, I don't know if either of you have listened to the series itself, but for me to cover John as a season, so covering him in 6 episodes of it, it really started with that viewing of Home Alone at the Place des Arts in Montreal when people erupted in spontaneous applause when he came on screen. Like it was one of those, like you got that rush and you're like, oh, right. Because I feel like John Candy, other than Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Uncle Buck, there weren't a lot of movies of his that I revisited. But when I started to go back and watch them, I realized I'd seen a lot of them in theaters. Like I'd seen my grandfather used to come from Toronto to Peterborough, where I grew up, once a month, and he'd take us to go buy a book. We'd have Chinese food, and then we'd go see a movie. And as a result of that, we saw a lot of movies that you would be surprised we saw in theaters. Among them, you know, we saw, I think my first one was The Great Outdoors, my first John movie. Who's Harry Crumb, Hot to Trot, Once Upon a Crime. I'm trying to think, I have a list here. Nothing But Trouble, Home Alone, obviously, Uncle Buck. These are all movies I saw in theaters. Now, some of those I never revisited again. I revisited it for this podcast, and some of them I revisited solely for this episode. But for me, revisiting them, it was that, like, I don't know if you remember that scene in Mad Men when Don Draper talks about nostalgia, like the Greek root of nostalgia being like an old wound, like opening an old wound. It felt like that. Like my connection to John Candy was sitting on my grandpa's lap in a movie theater, like that feeling of my grandpa's chest, right? And just like leaning back on his chest and watching The Great Outdoors. That was who John Candy was to me. So, you know, I'm sure both of you feel this way too. In writing about him and writing about his life and writing about his career, I started to feel very protective of him. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Tracey, with that the original biography, you start to be like, well, hold on a second. Like, why are we focused on this, or how truth based is this, or what's the agenda here? I felt very protective and like had rules about what I wanted to say about John Candy and his life, and I really wanted it to be work focused. So in that mind, let's focus on the work. Let's talk about the movies. The podcast itself talks a lot about his TV work. So I'm really excited to talk about the movies. So we're going to go through the movies chronologically, starting in 1975. We're going to basically assign each movie a red, a yellow, or a green. Red is like, this doesn't belong in the John Candy Hall of Fame. We're trying to land on 10 films. So red, yellow is, let's put this aside. Maybe it's a green, but we're going to have more of a discussion about it. And then green is like, this is an all-time classic. Any John Candy aficionado would have it in there, but also anyone who's coming to John Candy new should see this movie. That being said, even some of these movies that might, you know, get a red, or is that the lowest, as you say? Yeah. Okay. It still needs to be said that John is the best part of those movies. Yes, and that, always. In any of these movies, if you just like took out John's scenes, they still deserve to be kind of put up on some kind of a mantle. Maybe not in the Hall of Fame, but in the vestibule outside the Hall of Fame, there should be all of these John Candy performances. Because from the very start, he's just, there's always something to appreciate about all of his film performances. Yeah, so we'll put those in the foyer of the Hall of Fame.
No, and I completely agree with that, because I'm going to struggle, but I know I need to give reds. But as you say, we're protective of John. And even if the movie wasn't great, John always brought something to the party, and he was always great in it. And that's what any actor can do, isn't it? You know? So, yeah, totally agree, Joe. So, caveat at the beginning.
All big fans. So I guess we start with a pair of films. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and Find the Lady. It seemed like a good idea. Came out in 75. Find the Lady came out in 76, directed by John Trent. In it, John plays Kopek, who's kind of like a dim-witted detective. Have either of you seen these films?
Yes.
I have, many years ago.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So Tracey, how do you feel about this pair in terms of a legacy?
As I say, if you look down to John's work, I mean, the first film, he's not in it that much. He's got a much bigger part in Find the Lady. And if you look at the work that he does, considering this is probably one of his first, well, it is one of his first films, or a couple of films that he'd been in, he does a great job. And there's an awful lot of slapstick in it, which, although I didn't enjoy the films themselves, John doing slapstick is brilliant. There's one scene in Find the Lady where he just completely destroys an office just by bumbling and falling over things and destroying things. And it was just genius. So, yeah, from that point of view, John does great in it. Maybe I was born in the wrong era, but not so keen on the films.
Not so keen on the film. Yeah, for me,
not so keen on the
films. For me, that's my sense, is like you can watch the John parts. Especially it seemed like a good idea at the time. You can watch the John parts on YouTube and you're good. Unless you're really interested in Stephanie Powers from Heart to Heart, that maybe then you'd be more interested in this film. But in terms of John's work, watch the scenes. I think Find the Lady has a lot more, but as you said, they clearly watched the first film and said, oh, that guy's a star. Maybe we can build something around those two characters. I should say Lawrence Dane, who's a Canadian actor, listeners of my show, who are familiar with Scanners, he's in Scanners. This is one of 3 films I believe they made together, because he'll appear in one of the other early ones. Joe, do you have any opinions on Find the Lady or It Seems Like a Good Idea at the time?
Well, I will say that they're both interesting because John is so young, and even when he was in his mid-20s, he looked even younger than that. He always kind of had this baby-faced kind of look, especially up until his Hollywood success. But these movies, it's nice to see him. You can tell he's just kind of enamored with the idea of being in a feature film.
Yeah.
The only reason that I would have any negativity towards these movies is solely because these were heavily remarketed after John found success. And poster art was done that I'm sure you've seen them that ripped off the art from other movies. And so in that regard, I'm not very fond of them because I saw filmmakers there in the studio, whatever the Canadian production company was behind these, they really tried to tie into John Candy's later success. And I think a lot of people, either rented or checked out these movies and were so disappointed by what they ended up seeing.
Yeah, it's that classic fool you at the video store artwork.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of these early John movies do that, and I'm sure we'll touch on more of them.
Yeah.
Fair to say both of these are red? They go in the foyer?
John's always green, but it's in red. Yeah.
The next one, which is one that I didn't revisit until this week.
It's Halloween Eve, and 4 college friends plot to kidnap the wife of a wealthy friend at a costume party. Their identities and motives masked behind clown costumes, the 4 soon slip from comedy into deadly seriousness. By night's end, what started out as a joke has become a terrifying nightmare.
Wow.
And one of the stars is one of the great comedy stars from the 80s. And,
From the 80s?
Yes. In fact, he was on SCTV.
John Candy?
His name is John Candy. And his movie?
But that's got to be. Was it during the time he was famous, or is it an older film?
Well, it does list Splash and SCTV as his credits, but it looks like he did this one before.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. The Clown Murders.
That is absolutely right.
This co-stars Lawrence Dane. This is a really strange film. Joe, do you recollect this film very well?
Yeah, I mean, it feels very similar to the ones we just talked about. Very low budget, very of the time, and yet again another one that gets remarketed. And even today, the DVD has John's name more prominently featured when he's a very small part of the film.
And I think if you were to rent this one thinking it was a John Candy movie too, and you have this kind of like seedy thriller. I don't even know if you call it a thriller because it's not really that thrilling. It's just kind of grimy.
Yeah.
I think you'd be really disappointed.
If John wasn't in this movie, no one would ever talk about it.
That's true. That is true, sadly. And I interviewed the director and he's lovely. But he was very early on in his career as well. It was a bit of a student movie, really. So fair play for that. But yeah, agreed.
Martin Burke.
Yeah,
I wanted to, there's one that was 2 notable things for me in terms of Clown Murders, other than John's involvement, was Martin Burke has a screenwriting credit on Top Secret, which shocked me. And it was executive produced by Stephen Stone, whose book I have above for a future season of Once Upon a Time. He was a producer of Degrassi. So I don't know if either of you are familiar with that long-running series, but those are also notable people. Oh, and Al Waxman's in it. One of many times that John will appear in something that Al Waxman is also in.
It was actually Al Waxman that recommended that Martin should go down to Second City and have a look at John on stage and recommended him for the part. And I think John actually, to be fair to him, does a good dramatic performance at some stage during that as well. Yeah. But yeah.
Always excellent. Okay, the next one, 1976's Tunnel Vision, directed by Neil Israel.
Tracey, I feel like you had to have talked to someone involved in this movie.
I actually haven't, I'm afraid.
Wow.
I actually haven't, no. It amuses me. I don't, because it's a bit like a really naughty SCTV in some ways, combined with a few of the SNL cast and things, but John's not in it a lot. So I'm not, it's not one that I've revisited. It's one that I've watched once.
Correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, but it's an anthology film. Congress has this hearing about a particular station's programming and how, the programming is in bad taste. And essentially it's like Kentucky Fried Movie, where you're going through show after show after show, and John appears in one called Get Head, which is it's a cop show about the cop is a severed head in a box, and John's his partner. That's essentially the whole thing. And yeah, like you said, Tracey, it has Chevy Chase in it, Lorraine Newman, Joe Flaherty's in it, Howard Hessman's in it. But apart from that, I don't think I think this is a red.
Yeah, for sure. And the director of this, Neil Israel, he's made some decent comedy movies over the years, but he's done a lot of kind of like direct-to-video sequels and lower budget, some of like the later National Lampoon stuff. And this movie kind of feels similar to that. It feels like a National Lampoon knockoff, and it's just very clear that it's trying to, much like SNL, trying to harvest that talent that was around that time. It just doesn't really do it justice.
Yeah. Now the next one is I will probably do an episode on this series. I don't know if it's right for the Hall of Fame, but are either of you familiar with Silent Partner?
Love Silent Partner.
Yes, love Silent Partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, this in terms of a movie, this is an all-time classic. I love it. It's Elliot Gould, Christopher Plummer. It's a kind of like a reversed bank heist / thriller where Christopher Plummer plays this kind of psychotic bank robber who is after Elliot Gould because Elliot Gould, interferes in his bank robbery and ends up taking the money for himself. Screenplay by Curtis Hanson, music by Oscar Peterson. I absolutely love this movie. John's a very small part of it, though.
Yeah, but he's worked into the story in a very. This is where you start to see like the John Candy kind of that we would all know and love in movies start to come out a little bit, because he's kind of playing that just lovable friend or the coworker, and you can really see the seeds planted here for that role that he would kind of develop the rest of the 70s and 80s.
So one of the things I had said in our emails together was I was going to ask you about your philosophy in terms of picking John Candy movies. Maybe I should have done it at the beginning, but maybe this is a good time to do it now. I'll start with you, Joe. When we're trying to whittle this down to 10, are you trying to pick the best movies? Are you trying to pick the best representations of John as a performer? What's your kind of operating principle here?
I'm going for the best John performance, but also factoring that in with what might have been going on behind the scenes on those films. Mm-hmm. And also what was going on in John's life at that time, and just, concentrating on the performances, but not solely on that. Looking at some of the other stuff that went into these movies and figuring out why John felt compelled to do this part, and did it help him? Did it hurt his career? Right.
And Tracey, how about you?
A little bit similar. I think I go a lot more with my heart, though, in terms of John. Of just there's some that I think we'll probably all agree on, and we won't mention them yet, but and the listeners will probably agree on them too. But there's some that you just can't deny, isn't there? That you'll just love him from, and obviously his performance. You have to look at that. I think what Joe's saying about what's going on in his life at the time is interesting, but I've got a bit more heart than head with this, I think.
Right. So in term with that said, for both of you, is Silent Partner foyer?
It's a yellow.
It's a yellow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a green if you're not considering it as a John Candy movie. Right. But if you're talking about specifically John Candy and judging it off that, I would say it's a yellow.
Can I just mention about this film? I was so pleased he got the girl in this film when I first watched it. And then she cheats on him. And I was furious. It's a completely aside, but I was so pleased that John got the girl at some stage. Yeah, I was let down by that.
For anyone who's not familiar with the silent partner, for me, it's a this might say a little bit something about my movie going, but this and Pandora's Box are two holiday classics that we like to fire up.
Yeah, Christmas Crime is a great subgenre.
Yeah, and you know, yes, and it's a nice change from, you know, the usual classics that we all watch. But fully seek it out. It's not always available. Criterion had it, I think, 2 Christmases ago, but you might have to rent it now. But okay, next one is Lost and Found, directed by Melvin Frank. It's a follow-up to Touch of Class, a movie he made with George Segal. John has a very small part in it. Do either of you have strong feelings about Lost and Found?
I've never seen this one.
Tracy, have you seen it?
I have. I've seen a part of it anyway. I've seen John's part a few times. In terms of John's part in it, he's a car rental, a French car rental guy.
Yes,
that's trying
he has a French
to help.
accent in it.
He does. He has a French accent, and he's young as John Candy, and they've tried to make him look older, and they convinced him that by giving him dyeing his hair black, growing what facial hair he could, which wasn't a lot at that stage, and giving him a perm would make him look older. They needed him to be about like late 40s, 50s in it. And it's kind of a charming little scene where he's trying to help. Is George Segal, I can't remember the name of his character now, but he's had a car accident and his wife is basically trying to frame him and say that she had no part of it. And he's dictated to her. She's written it in French, and John's trying to help him out by telling what she actually wrote when he thought it would be fine.
You realize, of course, this is written in French.
Kind of.
Shall I translate it for you?
Not necessary. I dictated it myself.
Maybe you had better hear what you dictated.
It's a waste of time.
Listen anyway. To whom it may concern.
That's right.
I, Mrs. Patricia Brittenham,
Do solemnly attest.
that on the morning of the 15th of this month...
While driving in mountainous territory on the wrong side of the road.
Oh, mais non, monsieur. What Madame Britman has written is, while driving at a normal rate of speed on the proper side of the road, I was suddenly crashed into by an erratically driven car on the wrong side of the road, operated by a man whose only excuse was his quest for a free continental breakfast, obviously under the influence of alcohol.
It's a sweet little scene. John's good in it. I like his French accent. I like the fact that they tried to make him look older, and I like even more the fact that afterwards they said that the black would rinse out and the perm would rinse out, and it didn't. And for a while he had pink curly hair while it was growing out, which just makes me laugh. But apart
Tracy,
from that,
do you know if it seems like John? I've something I've never really been able to track down, but his characters always had different hairstyles and different facial hairs. Was that something that he brought to those roles, or is that? I mean, is it? I know John Hughes liked playing around with hair too, but I mean, really, when you think about it, he didn't sport his natural hairstyle in a lot of movies.
No, I don't know about this one. I think they did that to try and make him look older. So I don't know if that was his idea in this. But I guess once you show people that you're open to it, then it gives them, a way in to go, okay, we can do this, that and the other. When we get to The Great Outdoors, which we'll talk about in a bit, certainly he wanted a beard for that role and was very, very upset that he didn't have a beard for that role. So I think he did have some input. He was certainly open to it. He had the perm for Dell and things like that. But at that stage, I think that was their idea and he was just going along with it. But
when I look at Uncle Buck, he's got that kind of dark brown hair.
Yeah.
And I think that's in response to dyeing it after Who's Harry Crumb, maybe, because he had that. It's just it's hard to figure out what was going on with the choices that was being made. But when you look at him in this movie, you can see a little bit of Del Griffith, that look.
Yes, absolutely.
So I always wondered if maybe he was like, hey, I did this movie a while ago. Here's a picture of it. Can we do something like this? Because it looks very similar to how Del would end up looking. It's
interesting because I guess it's interesting. It's interesting that it should be an automotive thing as well, although he doesn't rent cars later on in Planes, Trains. But that sort of salesman type thing, maybe. I don't know.
I know, I'm sure both of you have seen this Eugene Levy interview for Once Upon a Crime, where he talks about the development of the mustache for that too. Have you seen that clip where he talks about John not being sure about the part, not being sure about the facial, and then just slowly whittling the mustache into what he ends up with in the film. So I wonder if it was sometimes he found a character from the outside in.
I think so, and I think when you learn about how he instructed the makeup artists on SCTV, how he was very involved in how the characters looked, and it seemed like those choices just helped him kind of escape into those roles a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So, Red, Foyer on Lost.
What do you think, Tracy? You've seen most of it of any of us.
See,
Roger Ebert gave it 1 star.
It's a red as a film. It's a red. Yeah, we've got a lot to go, so I'll give that a red. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 40 plus movies to go through, so some of them, have to go, Tracy. Yeah. 1941, which is one that I gave a lot of real estate for in the narrative itself. Some may criticize that. I'm curious because 1941 can be kind of a divisive movie for people. Maybe we'll start with you, Joe. What are your feelings on 1941 as a film, but then also as a John Candy film?
It's very hard to consider this a John Candy film. Tracy, I believe he had things cut out of this movie. Is that correct?
Bits and pieces. Yeah, certainly. I think it's a bit disjointed, isn't it?
It is as it stands, and it's there is a director's cut. I think that's like 20 minutes longer. I like this film only because of what it represents, and just it's Spielberg trying something new at a point in his career when he had the pick of the litter in terms of projects. I love just how bold it is and how large the cast is. It doesn't ultimately come together. John has very little to do. The scenes of him and Frank McRae are great. I wish there were more of that, their dynamic was more prevalent throughout the movie. Again, I've heard a lot was cut from this, but it's a very, very interesting failure. And I think it humbled Spielberg a little bit and kind of made him not really want to try a comedy again. But I miss the days when the big ensemble comedy like this, we saw Rat Race was probably one of the most recent examples. That was 20 years ago or so now. But yeah, the comedy ensemble, I think it can be fun if done right. And there are certainly movies that do it worse than 1941.
I don't think I've got anything to add to that. No, it's I can sort of tell you how John came about to be in it, which was interesting because he met Spielberg at a party and said, "I like your movie about the fish," which I always think is a lovely thing. But I think everyone was a little disappointed at how it turned out. Shame.
As a movie, I'm on the same page in terms of it being kind of a noble failure. I think what really stands out for me in this film is the miniature work. I think the miniature work is amazing. I think in terms of working on the series, the most fun I had was the 1941 stuff because of all of the extra material that's out there, the 60 Minutes interviews with Spielberg after it's a failure, or the home movies of Spielberg on set. So for me, what I found frustrating was trying to find John in the movie. So for me, 1941, even though it took up a lot of real estate in the narrative that I was writing about his life for the purpose of the podcast, I think it's a red for me.
Yeah. Joe, you okay? Yellowy red?
Yeah. It's again, he's in it so little, so it's. I think mostly everyone would classify this movie in a red, no matter what context it's being discussed in. So.
Well, interestingly enough, my daughter and I watched the Spielberg HBO movie, and they don't even mention 1941. Yeah. They jump to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I'm like, and my daughter's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "There's nothing about 1941 at all in this movie. How did they just jump?"
I think that was probably a Spielberg decision. Like, let's just
exactly. But that brings us to Blues Brothers. Blues Brothers, again, a similar film in terms of scale, a big. Kind of, as you say, kind of like the Rat Race kind of demolition derby of a film. But this one worked more or less for critics. Tracy, how do you feel about Blues Brothers and John's part in it?
Blues Brothers is a great movie. And I haven't met anybody that doesn't think that, to be honest. But John, as the cop was just like the coolest thing I'd ever seen in a long time when I first watched it. I don't know, it was only a small part again. It's getting slightly longer, I think, but it was just a small part. But his impact on screen every time he was on was, you know, he kind of packed a punch, and he was unforgettable in it, even though he didn't have that much screen time. I think it's a great movie, and John's a great addition to it. But just the coolest cop I've ever seen. And the fact that he sort of improvises some of those lines, and he comes up with the orange whip, which everyone quotes all the time. You know, it's kind of iconic. So, yeah.
Yeah, like Tracey said, I mean, he just does so much with so little in this movie. So even the very little he has to do, he's making it memorable. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the orange whip moment is one of the moments that people quote from this movie. It's such a small moment. It's at the very end, but that was, you know, all John. And I think he was always looking for opportunities for those moments. And I think John Landis was a director that welcomed that. So that's nice that he was able to get some of those moments in. Because this movie is, I don't see today them allowing this like 2 and almost a half an hour musical comedy existing. That it would be trimmed down. So I appreciate that this movie could exist at the time. And also it's worth mentioning that this movie really revitalized the Chicago film scene. And that
interesting.
Obviously plays a big part of some of the movies John would make later.
Yeah. I think one thing in terms of setting the context of John's career, there were kind of like 3 tiers of him, right? There was the bit part, or the very supporting actor. Then there was the second banana, and then there was the ones that starred John. And I think as one of the ones where he's just more seasoning to the show, to the movie, Blues Brothers is one of the great examples. Mm-hmm. So I'm reluctant to make it green right now. I think we should do yellow, because there's a couple other kind of in this lane that might ultimately take that spot. Are you guys comfortable with yellow at the moment?
Yeah. We're doing 10 for entries, right?
10.
All right. Yeah. Let's do the yellow, and maybe we'll circle back if we need to.
Yeah. We'll circle back on the yellows at the end.
Okay.
So the next one is Double Negative. This one is a thriller. He's got a really small part. For me, what's interesting is George Bloomfield was the director. So one of the SCTV directors directed this. It also, just in doing some research on it, Michael Sarrazin, I don't know if either of you are familiar with him, but he's worth a deep dive. He's apparently he's a Canadian actor born in Montreal, here where I am right now. I recognized his face, didn't know his name at all, but he seems like one of these Zelig characters that was just all around during the 1970s Hollywood era. Do either of you have strong feelings about Double Negative, or is it just in the foyer?
Probably in the foyer. I will say it's based on the book by a really talented writer of like pulp detective stories, Ross McDonald. So I always like that about it, but it's not the best representation of his work.
It had 2 names as well. There was Double Negative, and it was Deadly Companion in some places for some reason. Not sure why. But I thought John, he was a bit more of an adult role in that, wasn't it, really? A bit more adult content. And I thought he did it well. But again, it's a small part. Yeah.
The next one is, I think, one of the big films in his career, Stripes. So, Tracey, what do you have to say about Ivan Reitman's Stripes?
Do you want to start, Joe? I know he's come to me, but I feel like you'll be able to do it better justice.
Well, I am conflicted about Stripes because I know how uncomfortable John was with that whole mud wrestling scene. And you see that scene come up in a lot of like retrospectives or montages of John's. And it's just, one, I don't think it's even his funniest stuff in this movie. Like, I think, is there a movie on this? Flight stuff is better. The basic training stuff is better. So it's hard for me to look at this movie in another light, because I know John, even leading up to that scene, was very, very anxious about filming it. Felt like there was just some kind of they were making like some reference to a pig there, and I don't think that was the case. I think this was just a lot of these movies at the time had the larger friend do kind of over the top comedy bits, usually that commented on their weight. So it's, yeah, in that regard, I have mixed feelings on it, but it's fun otherwise. But I am probably more on the yellow with this one as a result.
I know he was excited when he first got the script because he was getting nearer the front. You know, that was sort of his thing. I don't know whether the mud wrestling scene was in at that stage. I know it was made a little bit worse because everybody was coming down to watch it because it was a big scene and lots of Second City people were there. I think some of the SNL crowd going down. And I agree with Joe. It's hard to watch and laugh knowing how uncomfortable he was. So what did I give it? I've written it down somewhere. I'm a yellow as well, but I do love Ox as a character.
It's like that Chris Farley SNL where he does the Chippendales, which everyone thinks is like, oh, that's like one of the big, and it's like it's not representative of what his talent was, and I feel similarly about John in that scene.
Yeah, I agree. If this is a Bill Murray list, it would be high on that list. But for John, knowing the backstory, even though in interviews he played it off.
He did, yeah.
Which he didn't always do with stuff. Like with some movies coming up, and even with 1941, he spoke quite frankly sometimes in interviews. But with with that moment, he kind of kept those cards closer to his chest from what I've seen, in terms of kind of playing off his feelings about that particular scene. But yeah, it's hard to see how much Ox and the mud wrestling is used when you see these kind of clip packages of John. I think it's a yellow as well. I think it and Blues Brothers in terms of the stuff he brings to it are pretty close for me, but this one has just a little bit more history to it. Next is an interesting one, which I have some strong feelings about. So Heavy Metal, 1981 anthology film based on Heavy Metal magazine, directed by Gerald Potterton. Joe, you won't know this, but Tracey, I did a graphic novel biography of Buster Keaton, and Gerald Potterton is a main character.
I actually own that, Ryan.
No, you don't.
I do. I do. I love the way you did that, where it's you took the documentary that they make about the Railrodder, and you kind of used that as a bookend to tell Buster's story. I love that.
It's great.
Well, that's I'm really chuffed to learn that. So for me, it's hard for me to say this because I knew Gerald personally. But for me, Heavy Metal's a red. I find it so boring. But I know it's a cult classic, so if either of you have strong feelings about it, please go ahead.
I think it was of its time. You get it? I think I might have been a little bit too young and came a bit late to the party. And there's bits in there that are funny. And John always does great voices, doesn't he? He's got a really good range with that. But yeah, I'll hand over to Joe. That's as much as I've got.
Yeah, it has things to appreciate about it, but yet again, I don't consider this an essential part of John Candy's filmography. It's just, but yeah, I mean, the animation is very interesting and visual, and I could see this movie playing really well at like a midnight screening today.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a solidly cult classic. But yeah, like I said, I think I've seen the whole thing from beginning to end, but I've seen it in parts because I find it, like I said, very boring.
Yeah.
Columbia Pictures presents Heavy Metal, a trip beyond the future to a universe you've never seen before. A universe of mystery. A universe of passionate fantasies. A universe of terrifying evil. A universe of magic. Heavy Metal.
So is it a red?
For me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say red.
Okay. It's a red. So next, I have Vacation 1983. I just have two words, lights out. Joe, do you want to start with Vacation?
Yeah, the thing about this movie that is worth mentioning when discussing John is how that entire portion with him was a reshoot done a few months later. And I think it's such a... I obviously, no one's seen that original ending. And for those that don't know, the original ending of Vacation had the Griswolds going to Roy Wally's home. He was still played by Eddie Bracken, but they didn't... None of that amusement park stuff happened. And I think in test screenings, they realized that people wanted to actually see them go into the amusement park. They wanted to get there. So they kind of rewrote that ending. And I would imagine John got brought in. Maybe Tracey, you can help me out through Harold's involvement in this. but it's
I think
another
so.
example of John doing so much with so little, and just every moment he's on screen, he's giving a memorable line of dialogue, a memorable quote that was just improvised, and it's much better because of it.
I agree. He completely embodies Lasky. And he's just fantastic in his facial expressions and everything that he puts into it. You can tell that he's having a good time as well, and that he's loving that part. But yeah, for such a small part, such a big impact. Yeah, made the film really for me.
Yeah, a lot of people also, like, I know when because it's worth mentioning that in between some of these roles was when John turned down Louis Tully in Ghostbusters, which a lot of people after the fact have been like, I can't see him playing that. But when you look at him doing Lasky in this, it's what his Louis Tully would have been like. I think, Tracy, I'm sure you've heard, but the issue was John just wanted to play that character with an accent and with a lot of dogs. And I think they were like, there's too much going on in this movie already. And I think he regretted that immensely.
Yeah, but I'm also quite proud of him.
I am as well, but sticking to his guns.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing with Rick Moranis, they look very different, but actually the amount of parts that they wanted Rick for that John took, and the amount of parts that John took that you know could have been the other way around. And when I spoke to Mel Brooks, he said he's only met 3 people in his career that could do comedy dell'arte, which is basically he gives you the story and you improvise it, but you still stick to the story.
Right.
And that was Gene Wilder, Rick Moranis and John Candy. So they're very, very similar in lots of ways. So I think it made sense that it did go to Rick. I would have loved to have seen John in that as well, though. I think that there's still a place for him there. But yeah, he probably regretted it. But I'm still proud of him for
I'm sure you've seen those the storyboards that came out a few years ago. That he looks more like you see him in like Going Berserk. Like he doesn't look like how Louis Tully ended up being. He just kind of looks like a regular guy. So it's and I think isn't even there's like a comic book that came out recently that like it's like an alternate dimension where that's the version of the character.
I haven't seen that.
It looks like John Candy. Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that exists.
Oh, that's fascinating. It's funny watching Vacation and then knowing he was up for that role. You really feel like, Ramis and Reitman were asking him basically to do the same thing, which he wasn't, keen on doing, I'm sure. But also knowing his worth and going, you know what, this is my quote, and if you can't meet it, especially for a movie like Ghostbusters, which it's not like it was a low budget movie that they put together with Scotch tape. It was a big movie. So yeah. So Vacation, going back to Vacation, automatic green?
Yes. For me it is, again, because also this is technically the first time John works with John Hughes indirectly. And fair enough. Sure that John Hughes saw John Candy do something with his material that was very special. And I think that definitely put him on John Hughes's radar if he hadn't been on already. Yeah, I think there's that. Also, how prominently he's used in the marketing for the film. They clearly knew what they had with that. Okay, next. Now, I'm really curious about this one because Going Berserk is not one that I grew up with. I don't remember seeing it on TV. I know John would publicly speak out against this film. He didn't like this film. I'm curious, maybe Tracy, begin with your feelings about Going Berserk.
I haven't got many feelings about Going Berserk. I think there's got some nice parts, and John has some nice bits in it. And I guess for people who don't know, he plays a character called John Bourguignon, great name, who is marrying a lady called Nancy, who's actually the daughter of a congressman who might be the next president. And there's a group of folks that kidnap John and try and brainwash him and basically try and get him to kill that guy. That's the basic premise. I think I've got that right, have I not? Yeah. Questioning myself. And there was some lovely SCTV bits in it. And, there's like Joe Flaherty and various other people in it. And so I kind of like it for that reason. And I like David Steinberg. So I want to like it for that reason. And I want to like it because John's in it. But it just doesn't quite cut it for me.
Now, Joe, this is the type of movie I would expect to see on your channel.
For sure.
What's
For
your
sure.
relationship with Going Berserk?
And I know everyone who's listening to this right now that might not be familiar with this is like, wait, there's a movie starring John Candy, Joe Flaherty, and Eugene Levy. I've never seen it. And then you'll watch this movie and you'll go, oh, I know why I've never heard of this. It's just like, he's playing a very different character than he ever played. And again, there's a lot of jokes at the expense of his weight, which is, it's to me always feels like a low blow in a comedy where you have these great performers that don't need to rely on jokes like that. And I will say it's got an amazing theme song that even references, it's like, I think it's the Candy Man, because you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's some interesting stuff in it. It's John's first, starring movie, but I don't consider it like the first proper John Candy vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, it started his life as to be that, but it ended up something clearly very different.
And I've seen that in the United States, at least, the marketing was very much like, it's like the Three Stooges, and it's like, it's not really. It's not at all. I mean, other than the fact that these three guys are similar physically, but it's, this is just a movie it's a bizarre product of the time. And is this a Canadian film, Ryan?
Yeah, it's a Canadian film. It's distributed by, I believe, Universal, but it's a Canadian film.
I have it was put out on Blu-ray recently by Shout Factory, which I own. I haven't seen the Blu-ray yet. I haven't seen this movie since I actually have it here. Universal put out many years ago this John Candy 3-pack, and it's you got two great movies there. Then it was Universal put it out, so they had to put in a third. They're like, what do we got? Oh, we got Going Berserk. Let's put that in with The Great Outdoors and Uncle Buck. So I feel like a lot of people probably picked this up expecting a triple feature of great John Candy movies, and you get to Going Berserk, and it's just
for me, Going Berserk, it's and seeing it for the first time months ago.
Did you go berserk?
It was the charm. It was the charm offensive of John Candy. He's like, wow, he's really charming in this movie, but then the movie fails. And then there's like some weird like racial humor at the end that's just like a bummer. So for me, it's a red, and I think he'd be okay with that. I think it'd be a red in his eyes too. He felt so kind of let down by the whole process. But then that leads us to the movie that I think of, Tracey, when I think of you talking about, revisiting John and those movies that made you comfortable. Splash.
Yeah.
I think a big movie for a lot of childhoods. Let's talk a little bit about Splash.
Yeah. So I think he's just like Johnny LaRue with a lot of heart in Splash. For anybody who's not seen SCTV, but his Johnny LaRue character is sort of this big, bold character who likes to walk the walk and talk the talk, and likes women and booze and all the rest of it. He was kind of like that sort of character, but then as you go partway through the movie, when you're getting towards the, am I jumping ahead? Am I meant to tell people what the movie's about? No.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So obviously he is Freddie Bauer. He plays Tom Hanks's brother in Splash, and when they're kids, they're on a boat, and Tom Hanks's character falls over and is saved by what he thought was a mermaid, but wasn't too sure. Fast forward into the future, and he actually ends up meeting that mermaid again, who's played by Daryl Hannah, and falls in love with her, doesn't realise she's a mermaid at the time. Freddie is in business with him. Freddie's always he's on his seventh marriage or something like that. I don't know. He's a bit of a womanizer. He's always drinking. Yeah. He's always late. He's always
sex
this, that, and the other. Yeah. Bit of a sex pest, yeah. Very unlike John, but yeah. And I really feel like he comes into his own partway through the movie when Tom Hanks's character has found out that Daryl is a mermaid, and it is just like, absolutely, this cannot happen. And he gives this big long speech about, he's never going to find love, he's never going to find happiness like that, and you just kind of see a little bit down into that heart and that soul. And yeah, he does the role a great justice, and he helps her escape at the end. My only thing about the film is I'd love them to say goodbye to John, because they go off, they swim off, he becomes a mermaid, and they never get to say goodbye. Right. Which always made me a bit sad.
That's not true, Tracy. There's a sequel. There's a sequel where everything is wrapped up. It's not John, but it's the characters. It was prevalent.
There is a splash too. Yeah, there is a splash too.
Yeah.
And they get to meet again. He gets to see his brother again.
I've never seen it, but I'm assuming. I know that the character is in it's a television film, and it's when we had that trend of sequels where instead of the number 2, it was TOO.
Was this a big movie for you growing up?
Not the biggest. I'm fond of it. I love John's performance in it, especially that scene, like Tracy was saying, that like scene about love and it's a crock. He's so great in that scene. So I love that this movie finally gives him a little bit of that dramatic. It's a bunch of things that really work about his character here. It's the best friend of the main character, which he always excelled at playing. Yeah. It's a movie that allows him to be funny, but also gives him a little bit of dramatic moments too. So perfect encapsulation of what a good John performance was. I don't love the movie. I find parts of the movie a little boring, but again, John, to me, a highlight. And Eugene Levy, it's also worth mentioning.
Yeah,
is fantastic in it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe I'll say at this point, for me, in doing this and revisiting all this work, Eugene Levy's not someone I got as a kid. Like I just, we were watching SCTV. I wasn't excited when Eugene Levy came on the screen. I love that man now, and I love them as a duo. I just think he's hilarious. Everything he does, I even think he's one of the best parts of Once Upon a Crime, his little cameo in his own film. But yeah, Splash for me, was a big movie when I was a kid. But also, one of my favorite parts in doing this research is finding the Ebert review where he's like, "Hey, I'd like to see this movie with John Candy as the star. Let's switch him and Hanks." And I think that's a good thing for John in his career, and finally someone seeing his value.
Yeah. Ebert always saw the potential there. And Ebert seemed very disappointed when those movies didn't give him that full potential. But then he was so complimentary when a movie did give him that potential. Like we'll get to it, but Planes, Trains, that was, they glowed about that movie. Yeah.
It's green for Splash or yellow?
I'm only a yellow on Splash just because there's others I would rank above it, but it's,
So we'll make this a rule. If one of us is a yellow, we'll make it a yellow because we're going to revisit it.
Okay.
Okay. So we only have 2 TV movies on this list that I shoehorned in. One is this next one is
Courage
The
of
Last
Kavik,
Boat.
the Wolf Dog.
It didn't make it on. The Last Polka. Have either of you watched this movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Either maybe Tracy, it's the biographer. What are your feelings about The Last Polka?
So for those people who don't know, it's a music mockumentary taken basically from SCTV. There's 2 polka playing brothers called the Schmengi
brothers
from Lutonia. It was 2 characters that John and Eugene dreamt up one night when they were watching some late night TV. And it's basically about them playing their last ever gig, The Last Polka. I think it's brilliant. It's darling. It's just, it's everything you want in a mock doc, really. They've got some brilliant moments in it. The chemistry between them both as brothers and as performers on stage, I think is phenomenal. I think it's really underrated. The performing on stage, because John did play clarinet, which he does in the Schmengis, and accordion that Eugene did play in real life. They were actually miming there, and I think you can tell that they knew those instruments pretty well because it's quite hard to catch them out. Yeah, very good. Yeah. And I just think the whole thing is hilarious, just from like the initial photos of them as their parents and Eugene as his mum, and it's just genius. So for me,
those recreations are really well done too, especially for the era. They're very,
no Photoshop back then, was there? So so I'll step back and let Joe talk. But yeah,
I love this movie. I as Tracey was saying, the thing about the Schmenkies is that while they're kind of these goofy characters, the music is always great. And I think that, like, the easy joke there would be that, oh, their music is kind of terrible. But it's great to see that they're legitimately talented musicians. And not only that when then that Rick Moranis character comes out on stage with them and starts doing that montage of medley of songs, like, it's so catchy. And I don't know why this movie hasn't been more rediscovered. I think HBO might own it. I don't think it's ever gotten a proper DVD release, at least not here in the States. But it is so funny, and the mockumentary genre became so popular. It's just a shame that this movie hasn't been preserved or rediscovered. Thankfully, you can find it on YouTube and things like that. But I would love like a Blu-ray of this movie. I just think it's so unique, and it's also one of the only films that, you know, John gets a screenwriting credit.
Yes, yeah, that should not go unmentioned.
And I remember when I got to meet Rick Moranis a few years ago, and I asked him, why did him and Dave Thomas direct Strange Brew? And he said that was just because when they would come up with a sketch at SCTV, you were responsible for essentially directing your own sketch. So, you know, with a movie like this, it feels very much like a very true to SCTV, whereas Strange Brew, the Mackenzie brother film, does feel like kind of a different animal.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. You're right. Very much, Strange Brew is very much, we're going to make a feature film that features these characters in the same way that Wayne's World is that. But yes, this would fit in an hour-long broadcast of SCTV. For me, this was a complete discovery. I had no idea it existed. I actually was a little bit reticent to watch it because I was like, you know, I would know about it if it was good.
Yeah.
And then watching it was one of those ones, watching it in bed at night and just kind of like slowly sitting up and going, is this, and just seeing how much fun both of them are having together. Like to see literally that chemistry happening in real time, that chemical reaction. I love it. And then just little things. One of my favorite parts isn't even a John and Eugene part. It's the little kid who's going through the records and just letting them drop on the floor of the record store as an interview's happening in the foreground. It's just so great. And I also came across, you know, a Reddit feed that's, you know, people talking about what would John Candy be doing now. And I feel like this, you know, as a precursor to, you know, Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show, like I just, you know, all of that potential, you know, it's all right there in the Last Polka. So for me, Last Polka is a green. I don't know. Are we in agreement about this?
Yeah, I would say so. It's also, I got to highlight that there's great visuals in this movie. The scene where in the barbecue where the fire is happening and it just gets bigger and bigger and more people are involved. I mean, such terrific moments like that, you know, I think that with this movie, it was probably like once they got there on set, around the props, in character, they probably came up with so much, and it shows. It's great.
That was little Jen Candy as well. Just by the way, by the barbecue, the little girl, that was his daughter Jen. So yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's great when they pop up and things.
It is, yeah.
By the way, I'm sorry. I found this for you guys to check out later. I'll put it in the chat. This article about John Candy in the new Ghostbusters comic.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So next we have Walter Hill's Brewster's Millions. So this sounds like an important movie for you, Tracey. I don't think we have to go through. Basically, Richard Pryor has the potential to inherit, what is it, $300 million, but he has to spend $30 million with all these caveats on how he can spend that money in a month's time. And John plays his best friend. So this is, you know, John on the back of Splash doing another second banana roll.
Mr. Brewster and Mr. Nolan, you are charged with assault and battery, resisting arrest, and destruction of private property. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse. You're going to love it. I think everyone here will.
I plead innocent.
You see, Your Honor, what you have here. with Mr.
Tracy, what do you love about this movie?
I think from what Joe said before was he's brilliant as the best friend. He's always so good as the best friend. And because he doesn't know, he's not in on that secret. No one's allowed to know that Brewster's got to spend all that money. And you'll see him at times get so excited because they're doing so well. And then other times you'll see him trying to be his best mate and going like, no, you should really be investing this and I'm going to save money and I'm going to do this. And like the heartbreak when he realises that hasn't made Brewster happy. And I just think there's so many lovely scenes from them playing the baseball to, you know, all the way through, to be honest. It's just you want John to be your friend. Everyone needs a friend like that. And I know it didn't do well critically. I don't think it did that well at the box office. But for me, it's one of those that every time it's on, I have to watch it.
Yeah, I don't think it's failures on his back either.
No, he's brilliant in it. And I guess it's part of that family. I love the fact that Rick Moranis pops up in it at some stage as well. But yeah, I just think he looked like he was trying real hard, without trying too hard, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Tracy, did you talk to Walter Hill at all when you were writing your book?
No, I didn't. I wrote.
Yeah.
I spoke to Lynette McKee so she could give me some insights of what it was like on set and what Richard and John's sort of partnership was like, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's surprising that Richard Pryor was known to be hard to work with, but he did get on with John. I know there's other things out there that says they didn't, according to Lynette, who was on the set right there, you know, they did get on, but Richard was a very different person. I think that was after his freebasing accident, and he was a bit more reserved by that stage.
I have heard Walter Hill speak about this movie, and while not suggesting they didn't get along, he seemed to suggest that John was more beloved by the crew, was more engaging with the cast, and was just naturally like more funny. And that I think was hard for Richard Pryor to see, more so him hitting it off with the crew like that. And honestly, when you watch the movie, I rewatched it recently for a podcast we did on Almost Cult Classics, and I was surprised by just how confident and funny John is, especially against Richard Pryor. I mean, this is a guy who is at that time one of the biggest comedy stars ever. And John holds his own and just comes off as relaxed and confident and funny. And it's great. I think he steals the show from Richard Pryor a lot, honestly. And it's just, it's a great performance. And you can tell that he was just having fun and happy to be there.
But again, I'm always really sad at the end. He didn't get to find out.
The end of this movie is so strange. Nothing gets wrapped up in the right way.
Thrown away. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. It's kind of jarring. We were like, oh, wait, like you ruined your friendship. You ruined, and I want to see them find out that this was all a ploy. Like, come on.
Me too.
So what are our feelings in terms of it as a Hall of Fame contender?
I go green with it, but if one of you wants to do a yellow, I understand why.
Mine's a green. It's definitely green.
All right. Alrighty. Green. Okay. I don't think we have to say much about Follow That Bird. John's in it for 5 seconds. I love the Muppets, so for me, just mentioning it is enough. But but he doesn't get to be in it with a Muppet, which is disappointing. But
that disappointed him. You know, that's how he ended up going on Sesame Street, because he was like, I didn't get to meet Big Bird or anybody, and they were like, okay, we'll sort this.
Well, yes, I'm sure he needed some bona fides with his kids that I actually know Big Bird, or I actually know Oscar the Grouch. But yes, if one thing Follow That Bird did is it led to that segment with Oscar the Grouch and Yosh Mengi. But Joe, do you is this a red?
Follow That Bird?
Yeah.
Yeah. For the purposes of this discussion, let's do red.
Yeah. Because the next one is Summer Rental. Now, right. Summer Rental is another one that I have a vague, like, again, I would have been 3 when this came out. So I would have seen it on TV for the first time. But I think it really holds up on a rewatch. Now, Joe, I know you recently did an audio DVD commentary for it, Blu-ray commentary for it, I should say, which I have. So thank you for that.
Cheers. Thank
do
you.
you want to say a little bit about Summer Rental and its place within his filmography?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to thank Tracey because she helped me in my research there because she actually got to speak to Carl Reiner before he passed away, which was a huge resource for me learning about this movie. I was able to speak to the co-writer, Mark Reisman, so I got some great detail. I think it has its flaws, this movie, but this, to me, when you look at it in terms of John's career, it's the first proper John Candy movie. Mm-hmm. It feels like a John Candy movie. He's playing the John Candy character that's lovable and also very protective of family, like so many of those stuff we would see in his later movies. It's not perfect. There's some pacing issues. Mm-hmm. Tracey, I know we've talked about the John LaRoquette bizarre subplot there that I think kind of throws the pace off. There's some that ADR stuff. I talked to Mark about all this stuff because I was just like, I have so many questions about some elements of this movie. But that being said, I would go green because it's, unlike going berserk, this is like, you can see John feeling comfortable, and it's just, again, the type of movie that he would make the rest of his career.
I agree. Yeah. I would go green just for the scene of him as a dad on the beach, hopping around people and spilling water on people and treading on people. And it was just perfect. That whole scene's just perfect. And I think for that, I would go green.
Yeah, this is, for me, it's like the lane I love him most in. I love the kind of family man lane. I'm curious, do either of you have any hot goss on why Rip Torn was such a nightmare to work with on the other than just Rip Torn's a nightmare to work with? I
believe that's the case. I believe that's mainly. Joe might have more insight, but
I've heard that he was a very serious performer. He was even characters in comedy movies, he did a lot of prep, and he was just no nonsense. And you've got Carl Reiner coming off of those great movies with Steve Martin. You've got, John. Definitely people like to have fun. So there probably was just a little bit of tension there. But Tracey, what's because the co-writer of the film had no clear recollection of this subplot involving an affair, or what was the deal with that? Yeah,
so John LaRoquette's character actually has an affair with Karen Austin, who plays, I'm sorry that I'm not getting the characters' names, that plays John's wife in this. And it went on a whole sort of rabbit hole down that. And when they took
But was it an actual, like, an affair, or was it just she was spending too much time?
No, because she was spending time with him anyway in the movie, wasn't she? Although it's been very disjointed and cut. But
at the very end, he's at the regatta with the son, cheering on. So it's just like, I'm like, what?
Strange one.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe they took it to test audiences and they hated that, and so they cut it, which makes it feel a bit disjointed. But it was Karen Austin herself that was telling me about that, and that they'd had, whether it was a full-on affair, whether it was just a kiss, or a flirting, hanging out too much. All the rest
I do
of it,
know too that Mark told me that the most of the stuff cut from this movie was the stuff leading up to the vacation. There was quite a bit more showing their family life.
Oh, interesting.
I forget what town that's in, but they were like, let's just get them on the road quicker. And the other thing about this movie that I always think is interesting, especially when you look at National Lampoon's Vacation, that whole movie is about the destination to the journey. In this movie, they get to the destination in 15 minutes, and it's a really fun movie about then adding stakes to that destination. That's what the movie becomes about. So it's an interesting switch there, but it works.
So that's a green.
Yeah.
Volunteers. So reteaming with Tom Hanks. It's funny. Volunteers kind of reminded me of what would be a vehicle for Buster Keaton in his sound era. And I don't say that as a good thing.
No.
Do either of you have strong feelings about Volunteers and or John's performance in it, or its role in his life?
I just, obviously, isn't this where Tom Hanks reconnects with Rita Wilson? So good for them. I'm sure that they have fond memories of John, and obviously Colin Hanks is doing this John documentary, so I'm sure that we'll hear some about Volunteers. But beyond that, when you want a reteaming of the two of them, I don't think it really does their pairing justice, and it's a shame that they never ended up playing buddies in a film again. I know he's supposed to do Armed and Dangerous with John, but it's okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's okay. They actually wanted Rick Moranis for that part. That's one of the ones where John came in and took over. I think it's Tom Tuttle from Tacoma. I love that name, by the way, and it has to be the full title. He's got some good bits in it, but yeah, I'm the same with Volunteers. I could leave it.
Okay, so Armed and Dangerous. Armed and Dangerous, in terms of its release, was not well regarded. Tracey, when we spoke the first time, you were a defendant you were in defense of Armed and Dangerous. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you like about that film?
I just think it's a nice 80s movie with a little bit of action and a little bit of a little bit of everything, really. And I guess what sells it to me is I love Eugene and John Candy together. So for me to see more of Eugene and John playing off each other, it kind of warms my heart. So from that point of view, I can't help but like it.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, it's great to see the two of them play off each other in a film. Obviously, they do it again in Speed Zone, but this is the one that I think you really get to see their dynamic come through.
Yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that you got Harold Ramis, again, working on the script for this, along with Brian Grazer. I think there was some disputes about them trying to get their names off this movie, if I remember
That's
correctly.
right, yeah, that's right.
So I'm not sure where that discrepancy came in. And then you've got Mark Lester directing it, who went on to do some other great stuff. But yeah, it's great to get to see the two of them play buddies. I also love the tagline, which is "At Guard Dog Security, John Candy is keeping you safe from the scum of the earth." I love that, but
very dramatic.
Not much to love about the movie itself, but John is great, Eugene is great, they're great together.
Yeah, I feel like I hold it in a higher regard than even the people that made it, in terms of like a vehicle for John Candy, but we're coming up to some of the all-timers. So is it a yellow or is it just a straight up red?
This is a yellow for me.
Okay, so Little Shop of Horrors, small part, plays a disc jockey. Love the movie. If this was the best movies John Candy was in, it would be in the top 10. But do either of you feel like it should be in the Hall of Fame when we're talking about him as a performer?
I think it was a great cameo, but again, a small part. And from that point of view, with everything else that's coming up, yeah.
Agreed. But just worth pointing out that here we have Steve Martin and John Candy in a movie together prior to Planes, Trains, which is interesting. They don't share any screen time. It's great to see him acting in a film again with Rick Moranis. And I mean, enough has been said about just the spectacle and the special effects in this movie and what Frank Oz did. But as a John Candy, movie, I don't see it as a green.
Yeah. So we all love it. Not in the Hall of Fame. Okay, now here's one I kind of yada-yada'd in the narrative. Spaceballs.
I have evolving feelings about Spaceballs.
Okay.
I had the realization...
Recently announced a sequel's coming.
A sequel is coming, which I never thought I would be like so lukewarm about a Spaceballs sequel with Rick Moranis returning. If you told me that when I was like a kid, that there would someday be but my excitement has been dampened just because so many of these years later sequels, comedy sequels that have come out recently seem to miss the mark. And again, we are doing it without John Candy, so I feel very conflicted in that regard. I like Spaceballs for what it is. I don't think Mel Brooks has ever seen Star Wars. It's to me, it comes across like you're poking fun at all the stuff you know about Star Wars on the surface. But once you really dig into the plot of Star Wars, like there's nothing there that remotely resembles Star Wars. Yeah. There's no, Royal King, and there's no, even like the Pizza the Hut where he's got that robot sidekick. It's like, this isn't like, it just feels like a guy who was just a little bit out of touch with what was popular at that time, attempting to satirize it. I loved it as a kid. I think it's a little hacky watching it now as an adult. But yet again, John is fantastic. Some of the best lines in the movie come from him. I think it's worth mentioning that as written and envisioned, the Barf character was supposed to be a full prosthetic mask. And when John got hired, they quickly realized we need to show his face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Tracey, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think Rick suggested John for the part.
Yes, I believe they used to do that a lot. I believe so. Yeah. And I think Mel wanted to work with him anyway, but kind of saw him as Barf. I don't think anybody else could have been Barf. But yeah, I mean, like John in it, in terms of like the animatronics was quite a difficult thing for him because he had those ears to make the dog expressions to match his face and the tail and everything else that was moving. And I know Rick Lazzarini, who was the animatronic guy on Spaceballs, worked really close with him to make sure they could get him as close to a dog as possible. And I think they pulled it off beautifully.
And John was a dog owner, so he probably...
Right? Yeah. He studied his own dog, Kima, who was a Labrador, to sort of get the expressions and, you know, the way he'd move and things like that. So he put a lot of work into that, and I think it paid off for him. And as you say, he improv'd a lot of lines that Mel kept in as well. So in terms of a John vehicle, I think it was really good. In terms of a movie, I would probably the same. I liked it more when I was a kid.
I found this to be a tough rewatch, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But again, coming from liking it as a kid,
I've heard a lot of people have expressed that sentiment recently. There's something about that's not quite holding up.
Yeah, the diner scene to me at the end, the diner scene with the alien burster, is the best scene.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to be the scene with Bill Pullman and John Candy in it. But yeah, as a movie, I'm not super keen. For me, it's at most a yellow right now.
I can go with yellow.
Yeah, yellow.
Okay. All right. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Anyone like this movie?
It's okay.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Let Joe go. Joe's done a lot of work on this.
Yeah, I have always loved this movie. I don't know why. It's just something that always really was enjoyable and comforting about this movie. And I know that Thanksgiving is such a uniquely, especially in the fall when it happens in America, is such a unique American experience. And this movie always really represented that well. And even before I really learned that there had been a lot cut out of this movie, when I watch it today, I watch it every year, as I'm sure most of us do.
Mm-hmm.
I will say at a certain point, probably like when they get in the rental car, that movie just takes off and it doesn't stop. There's no breathing room in that movie until the credits roll. And while I love it and worship it, there's so much stuff in that script that, I mean, just like a 10-minute buffer, I think would have really fleshed out some scenes and some of the performances. But again, that could be me just being like, I want more of it. I love this movie so much. I want more of it. But there is I don't know if you two find this, but there is a certain pacing just like so tight and so rapid.
Yeah.
And even before we got the deleted scenes when they came out in that work print, the one scene we had, that airplane food scene, it's hilarious and it benefits the movie so much. It just gives a nice little break in between. It shows them getting to know each other. And I'm like, why is this not just in this movie?
Yeah, it's comedy gold, that scene. And it is a shame it's not there. But I guess when I first watched the movie, I just went, well, that's perfect. And then you learn about all the other stuff and you go, oh my God, you know, it could have been even better. But I guess I thought it was perfect originally. It's just the afterthought of thinking, oh, you could have this and that in it. And you read the other scripts and there's just so much gold in there. It must have been so hard to edit down. It really must have been. But I agree. I wish they kept that scene in, especially because it's just so funny and so relatable.
Yeah, for me, this one, this was a little bit of a later one too. I remember, being a John Candy fan as a kid and wanting to rent this, and my mother saying, "Oh, that's not for you. That's more adult." And when I watch this now, I think of all the John Hughes movies, this might be the one that I would show my 9-year-old first in terms of like, I can't think of any racist moments in it. I can't think of any misogynistic moments in it, apart from the F word, which she can hear anywhere. I don't know why this is rated R. This is not only my favorite John Candy movie, this is my favorite John Hughes movie.
It was purely
it's
the
worth noting
F
that-
words. Sorry.
I was just going to say, the PG-13 rating begins in 1984, and that kind of did end up changing the way comedies were marketed. But I give Paramount so much credit, because today there's no way a studio would be like, wait, the only thing making this not PG is this F-bomb scene, like, cut it. I'm so in awe that the studio allowed that scene to remain, allowed it to get the R rating, and just it's great. And it's such a special movie too, because you read about how the ending was completely transformed in its editing, and it's so special in that regard. And Paul Hirsch did such a great job in finding those alternate takes to restructure that whole ending and change the tone of the film in a lot of ways. And it's better because of it. So green.
Yeah, a green. Yeah, the most green of greens. She's having a baby. Small cameo. I don't think we need to talk about it. So let's move on to the next John Hughes collaboration, The Great Outdoors.
Big Bear chase!
What is he saying?
What? Big Bear chase me!
I said earlier in the podcast, this was the first one I saw in theaters. On rewatch, I think it held a warmer part for me, memories of the kid, but then I watched it a couple more times, and I've kind of gone back to that nostalgic view of it. I really like this movie. I like seeing him and Dan Aykroyd together again.
The only thing I'm going to say about, I love John in it. I love Dan Aykroyd. Love them together. Great. The romantic subplot in this movie with the kids is near film ruining.
Yeah.
It's seriously, it slows down every single and like funny scene. They use that same horrible instrumental musical score over those scenes. The two of those characters have no chemistry. It's just like, what are we doing? We don't care. And even like during one of the great scenes, the steak scene,
right? Yeah.
We're cutting to him looking at the watch. It's like, just who cares? Like, get it out of the movie. So I don't know. I know that John Hughes was unhappy with what Howard Deutsch did with this movie, and the two of them never worked together again. And I know he was similar. We're going to come back to career opportunities. John Hughes has some problems with that as well. But yeah, I don't know where something was lost in translation there between that subplot, and I'm sure how John Hughes wrote it, because he was so great at writing teen romance. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think I black those bits out, to be honest. I think I just completely blank out, because I just go to the relationship between Dan and John in it, and love that. And I do tend to,
And the bear.
Yeah, and the bear, of course, the bear. He was not CGI. He was really chasing John Candy. You know, he was absolutely terrifying, even though he was trained very well. So yeah, I go to those bits.
Real quick before I forget, sorry to cut you off, Tracy. I did hear that John Hughes was intending to direct this movie, and Howard Deutsch was going to direct Planes, Trains. And when Steve Martin signed on for Planes, Trains, John said, "Hey, can we switch? Because I really want to work with Steve Martin." So. Who knows? This movie might be, had John Hughes directed this one, we might be talking about it as reverently as Planes, Trains, or vice versa. It's hard to say.
This is Annette Bening's first movie too, right?
Annette Bening's first movie. You've also got some deleted scenes that have resurfaced, over the years from this, and yeah, it's just I don't know what it just. There's something that feels like this was either rushed or that no one was on the same page in certain aspects of this movie. But John is great. And him and Dan are great together.
So I'm sensing some ambivalence. Is this a yellow?
Not for me, but that's okay. We can go yellow. Can I just mention about the John Hughes universe as well? Because I just love the fact that in She's Having a Baby, that tiny cameo where John Candy and Dan Aykroyd are suggesting names for the baby, they are playing their characters from The Great Outdoors. And that, I believe, is this right, Joe, that She's Having a Baby is playing in Planes, Trains and Automobiles when Steve Martin's wife's trying to go to bed. And I just love the way that all sort of ties in together. But yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
But I would say this is a green. I mean, while the romance subplot I think does take away from the movie, it's like when you think of the great John Candy movies, this is one of them.
It's up there.
You like the John Candy movie within this larger film. Yeah. Okay. Another one I saw in theaters, but I have to admit, did not revisit. at any point since seeing it in theaters, Hot to Trot. Is it worth discussing?
I watched it once a while ago.
Yeah. Joe, can we expect any video essays on that?
This might be, I get a lot of requests for this, and the only thing I actually have never seen it in full, but the only thing I do know is that Elliot Gould had voiced the horse, and then they test screened, didn't go well, so John re-recorded that part after filming had wrapped. So I would imagine that he transforms the material and makes it enjoyable.
I know Bobcat says the only good thing about that movie is John Candy.
Yeah, Bobcat seems to have a sober view of his projects.
I think he did that one for the money. I believe there was something that I read where he was like, "Why would I do this?" And the agent was like, "Look at this," you know.
Yeah.
He was like, "Okay." Yeah.
Yeah, there's a fun Bobby Wygant interview with Bobcat where he's I think already kind of distancing himself from the film. Okay, then that brings us to I think another one. For me, Who's Harry Crumb? That is when I think of John Candy, the image of him on the window is what I think of. So I don't know how recent it was, but Joe, you've done a video on Who's Harry Crumb.
I have, yeah. I like this movie because it's one of the first ones where John was really asserting himself as a producer behind the scenes. He was very involved in setting this movie up with his production company, and I enjoy it. There are definitely parts that are a little cringeworthy, but I think it's a very well-intentioned, humorous movie. I think John is great in it, and I love all the character work he gets to do in it, and just a great supporting cast. It's nice to see him with Valerie Bromfield in it, and so many great Annie Potts again, and yeah, I like it. I would say it's a green, but I know there are people that dislike this movie, and I can understand why.
It should have done better. I think that was one of the things that it should have done better, and I think John was frustrated with that because I believe the marketing team at the film studio weren't great, and all got promoted afterwards for some reason, which kind of like frustrated him. But it should have done better. It should have been made a bigger deal of. His range in it of the character work is fabulous. Some bits that don't hold up as good as others, but in terms of a John performance, great one.
Some really funny lines, really funny physical comedy. The dizzy bit is great, and I've also always heard that it's like considered bad luck in Hollywood to put a question mark in your title.
Really?
And yeah, apparently, and this was a movie that they didn't want to have that question mark. I don't know. It did seem like there was a marketing issue and how they were going to market this movie, and also directed by Paul Flaherty. So.
But I know that John asked for, because he was doing a lot of radio at the time, and he'd asked for the marketing team to send adverts over to the radio to get it played on there, and they just sent money for the adverts. They hadn't made the adverts. They hadn't even thought about making the adverts, and it was just like, oh my god, what am I doing?
For his radio show, it's incredible that wasn't thought out.
Okay, so this isn't a speed I like him in. Like I said, my favorite is Family John Candy, but it sounds to me like, is it a green?
It's a green for me.
I would say it's a green, yeah.
All right. Like I said, the image is iconic, at least for me in my life.
Yeah, I have the...
Yeah, he fell down earlier. You have the cardboard cutout there.
I have his hands still, but he had suction cups on his hands, and they've since ripped off. But the other side was obviously hanging in some kind of a window for a long time before I acquired it. So
that's so cool.
The next one is Speed Zone. Roger Ebert hated this movie. I'll be honest, in the rewatch, I skipped to John's parts. Either of you have strong feelings about Speed Zone? No. That's
I think it's a red only because I think even John later admitted that he was just like kind of doing it for the money, and he talked Eugene Levy into coming to do it with him. Just like, come on, we'll have fun. The movie won't be good, but we'll have a good time hanging out together. And I think that's evident when you watch it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Uncle Buck, a movie that surprised me, got mixed reviews. I thought everyone loved it.
Mixed reviews, but huge hit. Number one at the box office for multiple weeks.
you're wearing an Uncle Buck hat, Joe. So and you've done the audio commentary, so I'll leave it to you. What do you want to say about Uncle Buck?
This is my favorite John Candy movie. I mean, it's hard to say this because Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is my favorite movie, but this is my favorite John Candy movie because it feels so tailor-made to him. Planes, Trains, while I'm sure John Hughes had actors in mind writing that movie, this is the one where it's like he wrote this script specifically for John. They probably worked together on it, and it's just tailor-made to him. And I love this movie because you get those sweet moments from John, but then we also get those vulnerable moments, like him looking at the photograph of the wedding that he's been folded out of. And then we get also a little bit of menace from him. There's some very, we see kind of this unlikable side of him come out when people are kind of, I guess it deals with the love of his family. He's very protective over his family, and that's when that side of him comes out. But it's just a really great movie in that regard, and the entire cast is great, and John is great. I mean, this is I think when you think of John Candy for eternity, he'll be first thought of as Uncle Buck, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Tracy, you have anything to add?
No, just everybody needs an Uncle Buck. And I think if you didn't love John before, this is the film where you fall in love with him, and I don't know anyone who doesn't like it. It's a green.
Yeah. No, green as green as gets. Here's an interesting one. Home Alone. So another John Hughes collaboration. Famously, John worked a day on it. Famously could have had, I don't know if this is erroneous, but could have had profit participation, but declined it. Feelings on Home Alone and his career.
It's just a beautiful
Tracy,
cameo.
why don't you take it?
Yeah, thank you. It's a beautiful cameo. The fact that he worked on it for less than 24 hours and gave so much and improvised so much, and again stole those scenes like he did in Blues Brothers as well. Like he takes those scenes, he runs with them, and everyone. It's one of those things. I know you said when you were at the cinema and you went to watch it, Ryan, that everyone cheered when John Candy came on screen. Yeah, that's how I feel every time I watch that movie without fail. Yeah, I won't keep going on, but it's so.
But there's no goodbye again. There's no goodbye.
Yeah, you want him to meet
filmed.
little Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah. Have you ever seen? There's one of the neighbors of the house where the exteriors where they filmed in the suburban Chicago had like home video footage, and John was there on set at that location with the van. So they did film Catherine O'Hara getting out of the van and hugging and saying goodbye. And in one of the trailers, there's an alternate take of him talking to her outside the van. He says something like, "You're going to have a great Christmas. I know it." So I'm like, why? Just that it needed that little, you don't want to give too much time to that character, but I think a little goodbye moment would have been sweet there.
Absolutely. I would have loved to have seen that, especially after he went so far out of his way and got her home in time for Christmas. It would have been nice to have some sort of resolution.
And I'm working currently on something, a video on Baby's Day Out. And I'm working with someone who was in that movie. And at Home Alone, I don't know if I would call it a green because I think this movie changed John Hughes' career in life a lot in unexpected ways. And I don't know if that was the best for him. I mean, I'm certainly happy for him in that success. I don't know because this movie smashed records. I don't think a lot of people today realize that. It was, for many years, it was the highest grossing comedy. I think it's one of the Hangover movies, topped it, 20 years later, but it changed John Hughes overnight, changed his career overnight. And when you look at where his career went, some of those choices he made after this movie, I see studios being like, we need our own Home Alone. John, you need to write us another Home Alone, and I think we lost some good stories there that could have happened as a result.
Yeah, we need to do Baby's Day Out. We need to do Dennis the Menace.
Yeah.
We need to okay, I'm going to put it as a yellow only because I feel like it belongs in that same family as Stripes and that.
For me, it's a green, but I'm happy to go yellow. It's a green.
I'm going to put it yellow for now.
That's all I can do about it.
Yeah, I have control of the spreadsheet. Same year as Home Alone, Rescuers Down Under. I'll be honest, I've never seen it.
He plays Wilbur, which is Albatross, and it's not the biggest part, but it's a great part, and I think you can tell that he has a lot of fun with it. That's why I like it. I know that he loved doing animation. I know the fact that he didn't have to go into hair and makeup, and he can just do his voice turn up as he was. And for me, I think it's just a joy to see him as Wilbur the Albatross. And hear what fun he had with it.
Yeah.
Joe, you did that video on Camp Candy. Do you have any sense? Did he have his own recording studio or anything? Did he have to go places, or was he like Eddie Murphy? And
I think Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think through the radio station and all that stuff, he had a studio that he did a lot of the stuff in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he recorded anything, but you can see those animation tests for the turkey character in Pocahontas, the Disney movie. He was going to play the animated sidekick to Pocahontas, and I think they used either like just clips from Planes, Trains, or a sound-alike to animate that test. And then at a certain point, Disney was like, "No, we want to get away from the talking animal angle," and they scrapped that. But I know that was planned. He was going to do a Red Feather, I think the character's name was.
Yes, right.
Pocahontas.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is a great voiceover artist, and I'm bummed he didn't do more kids movies like this. I see, like, had he been alive longer, he would have been in some Pixar stuff and would have been a great fit.
I think he'd still be doing loads of that today. I think he would have gone directing, but he would be in loads of animated movies today. I think he would have loved that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Red, though?
Only because it just doesn't... We have so much to get to, and it's... Yeah.
Okay, speaking of so much to get to, Nothing But Trouble. Another movie I saw in theaters. I'll be honest, when I think of this movie, I don't think of John Candy's part in this movie.
Which one of them?
It's not in the top three. Yeah, exactly. I think of Dan Aykroyd's nose.
His little cock nose. That really put me off.
Yeah. To me, we said at the beginning that John Candy was not an insignificant part in anything he did, and he was always great in everything he did. But his parts I just don't think about when I think about this movie.
I think So I am fascinated by this movie, and I do have a lot of respect for it and respect for the inventiveness that Dan Aykroyd encouraged, especially in the crew and just in this constructing this world. And it's so inventive, and the props and sets and choices. John is very underutilized, and I think everyone involved here in the cast was just like, oh, Dan Aykroyd, we'll do it for Dan, because Dan Aykroyd seems like a great guy, and he's directing his first movie. I would be willing to bet that the best stuff in this movie was in between takes. The stuff happening on set was probably way more enjoyable than the comedy in this movie. And similarly to Stripes, you see so much of John's character. The joke is it's a big guy in drag, and he doesn't talk. It's a mute character. So it's, while I respect the movie itself, I would probably give it a red for John Candy's career, because I would imagine he was a little embarrassed by it probably, and you
just get the feeling he's not enjoying himself. I think that's the big thing for me. I didn't get the feeling he was enjoying himself on screen. It should have been great. It should have been a great movie with everybody involved.
And I heard that Dan Aykroyd directing his first movie, he gave everyone their own video playback monitor, so they can essentially look at their own performances and direct themselves. And I think it was John Hughes who visited the set and was like to him, "You have to get rid of these. Everyone's going to be doing their own." And that's what this movie feels like. It feels like everyone's doing their own thing, and none of it's really coming together.
Was it Tom Mankiewicz as well that went and visited and just went? It had the same observation as well. That everyone had too much input.
Probably, yeah.
Too much input. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so red for Nothing But Trouble. Career opportunities. Do we need to talk about career opportunities? A small role, small cameo.
Just watch his scene on YouTube.
That's all you need.
Yeah,
it's really good.
It's great.
Yeah, we'll link to it in the show notes. So red for that. Only the Lonely. So Only the Lonely is an interesting one, because Only the Lonely. Again, I saw it when it came out, but I haven't been able to rewatch it because it's only available on out of print DVDs. So I'm going to turn over to one of you to talk about Only the Lonely. For me, I would have assumed this is a green, but I can't really speak to it.
It's a green for me. It's I love this movie. It's shocking it's not more talked about. It's one of the only movies John Hughes produced yet did not write. It's a delightful romantic comedy. John is totally believable as the romantic lead. And much like what I think you had said, Ebert said about, was it Splash? Like you want to see the vulnerable guy in the romantic lead, and it totally works. Maureen O'Hara is fantastic. They're fantastic together. Anyone hasn't seen it, go watch them on Johnny Carson together. You can see the admiration she has for John. Like, just she's glowing when looking at him, and he had done a lot behind the scenes to ensure she had a good time on set, making sure she had a good trailer. And the other thing I think that's unfair about this movie is it's been called a remake of Marty, which, while there's definitely similar themes, this movie is so much different. And it's unfair, I think, to call this movie a remake because it's so unique. And John's a big part of why that is.
I think he based a lot of that role when he was playing it over his actual real life mum as well. Because, as we know, John lost his dad at a really young age, and he kind of was the man of the household, and he had the car the white knight, and he'd have to take them to bingo, and there'd be issues if he couldn't, and balance and all that. So I think he said a lot of that came into it as well. But they're just both so believable as mother and son, and as you say, you want him to have that romantic interest, and he's such a good guy in it. And there's so many sweet bits in it, and there's some funny bits as well. It's a great all-round character, and I think it's one of my top fives. I don't have a top one. I have 5 that I swap round, and it's in my top 5. So it's a green for me.
Good. It's also it's interesting, Ali Sheedy's about like 12 years younger than John, and yet they're still very believable as a romantic
really believable
couple.
Yeah. And that first date they go on, that's just such a beautiful scene where she's so awkward and he's awkward, and you just feel for them because we've all been there. It's beautiful.
I love the moment when they're at the opera, and you can tell he's like conflicted about like grabbing her hand, and he just does it very like you can tell that that's not just John as the actor. There is some hesitation to dive into this romantic lead, and I just love it. It's a very sweet film, and everything fortunately gets wrapped up very nicely. There's no lingering
everyone gets to say goodbye.
goodbyes that need to be said.
For me, I mean, I don't know what it was like for either of you, but in the Canadian context for John Candy in 1991, he was on TV a lot because he was doing the Argos thing, and he was just doing that. So this movie felt like a big movie when it came out. I was surprised to learn that it wasn't as big as my memory of it was. But yeah, like I said, I haven't been able to watch it since I was younger, like 12 years old or whatever. But yeah, I think it has to be a green just for where it stands in his career.
And I think, unfortunately, it's going to be a while before you see this movie get like an official re-released because it was a Fox movie who now Disney owns. And I don't think Disney is very interested in like licensing out their titles to like third-party Blu-ray companies like Kino and Shout. So.
But why isn't he even on Disney Plus? Like I don't understand that now.
I don't know.
It was on Stars.
It's a Chris Columbus.
I might have It was on Stars for a while. I might have a copy, Ryan, if you have any interest. I have it.
I'll pay the money for the DVD. I just haven't had a chance.
Yeah. It's worth picking up if anyone hasn't seen this movie. I think it's a delightful comedy.
Next, I'm very curious about this one. I had strong feelings in watching it. Delirious. I know, Joe, I feel like it's recently, but maybe I'm wrong. I just did
It was within maybe the last year or so.
Last year, okay. So you did a video on Delirious.
We talk about his movies a lot. They all.
So feelings on Delirious, and then I'll share mine.
You go, Joe.
I like that it's yet another movie that just lets John be a romantic lead. It doesn't feel like there has to be a ton of stakes to set that up. It's organic. It feels natural. It's a fun concept. The cast is all great. There's some really funny moments in it. I know John became good friends with the director, Tom Mankiewicz, who's of the Hollywood dynasty of Mankiewicz families. I'm hesitant to give it a green, but I do think there's a lot of good in this movie, and it's just very interesting. It's very high concept, and yeah, I don't know. I like that concept of a guy who's like, when whatever he writes happens. I don't think they take full advantage of the concept, but it's still an enjoyable ride to me.
Was it Soap Dish that came out the same year? I haven't actually seen Soap Dish. But
Yeah, it feels like there's like a subgenre of.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of overshadowed it a little bit. I like elements of this movie. I love John. I love Mariel Hemingway, and I love Tom Mankiewicz. But yeah, it's not a green for me.
Did you talk to Tom for your book?
No, I think he'd passed by then. I talked to Mariel,
okay,
who just loved John pieces, and they had an absolute ball. You know, Tom and John got on so well, and they shared so many stories, and every day I believe it was just a joy to turn up to set. So they had a great time.
I love the poster for this movie too, with John at the typewriter looking sweet. I love that.
It's a great image. Yeah,
it's also one of the ubiquitous images of him too. Right? Okay, I hated this movie.
Okay, that's okay.
I liked Mariel Hemingway. I thought this was one of the rare films where John's charm didn't come through for me.
It's kind of like an Ebenezer Scrooge type arc for him, of like this like like Bill Murray and Scrooge. It's like that. He's got like the executive that's kind of real. He works too hard and doesn't have time for a personal life. Like, so I think it does evolve a little bit, but yeah, at the start he is an unlikable character, and
was this movie shelved for a while too? I saw a couple interviews with him saying like, I don't know when that movie's coming out, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he was at this. It's crazy that as like the 90s began, he was in so much.
Yeah, I have 5 movies in 1991.
Yeah, because I know he was. I think after, I forget what, but he was starting to be more critical of the roles he was taking on, and wanted to be more involved in the behind the scenes of these movies that he was working on.
Okay, so what color should we do this?
I mean, it sounds like the consensus would be a yellow.
We'll do a yellow. Okay, JFK. Interesting. He plays He plays Dean Andrews, very small role, very memorable role. In a long film.
He nails it.
Completely different side than he's ever shown before. I'm just cognizant of the time. Is this a green for you guys? For either of you?
I think that I like it because well, first of all, I liked that Oliver Stone trusted John to do this purely dramatic performance, and I think John nailed it. And watching it for me is very bittersweet because you see in it where the career would have been going. So it's hard for me to watch it in that light. But it's like at the same time, it's a very good example because it's small and it's in a movie that's filled with big actors and small parts. So yeah, it's a good movie, and John is great, but yet again, it's like, I don't know if I would put this in the Hall of Fame.
I struggle with this because you look back at interviews of Dean Andrews and you just think of how much work John did to nail it, and he really did. He did so much work, and he did such a great job, and it was kind of diverting away from some of the work he's done and going to more dynamic, dramatic and dynamic roles. And for me, I would have put it as a green, just because I think he was really proud of it, and I'm really proud of him in it, and he just did so great in it. But who am I?
How many? Where are we at green wise?
Oh, I think we're over.
Are we over?
Let's see.
Whatever. Throw it in there.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a.
Look, we're not putting Canadian bacon in there, so throw it in there.
There'll be a situation of killing our darlings in a few minutes here. Once Upon a Crime, another movie I saw in theaters. Don't know why I saw this movie in theaters, just looking at what it was and how old I was at the time, but I guess it was what was new at the movie theaters that week. Generally liked the movie better than I thought I would. I think Jim Belushi ruins most of this film and ruins a lot of scenes that John Candy's in. I think Jim Belushi's
that could be said of multiple Jim Belushi movies.
I remember liking him as a kid, and watching his stuff now, I just don't know what I saw.
Yeah, him and John were good friends.
Yeah, very good friends.
Yeah,
I know. Did you talk to him for the book, Tracey?
I did not. No, I tried.
Yeah, he seems so approachable and warm, and open to that opportunity. I'm surprised.
I think in light of how many greens we have, I don't think Once Upon a Crime is going to make the list. But does anyone have anything to say?
I'll just say
it?
I haven't seen it in many years. Is it worth revisiting?
It's not. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
I hate
because you look at the cast, you look at the poster. Eugene Levy directed it. I know it's based on. Is it an Italian?
Yeah.
Film.
It's Nancy Myers and what's his name, Charles, her former husband, wrote the screenplay.
So when you look at it on the surface, you're like, man, everything about this looks like it's just going to be a knockout, like kind of like Clue. And then I just remember being like, what is this?
Yeah. Okay, so Rookie of the Year, like the movie, like John in it.
Yes.
Don't know if it makes the list, though.
I will just say, I don't think it makes the list, but I was unaware of how big his role was because it's uncredited. I've never seen Rookie of the Year. I wasn't into really like sports movies as a kid, but I recently read Daniel Stern's memoir, which I recommend if anyone wants to learn more about him and his life. And he talks about this movie a lot. And adding John Candy in was something that they decided to do after filming had wrapped. They needed a little more time, and they were like, let's get an announcer. And Daniel Stern, having seen how John was able to bring Gus Polinski to life with such little time, was like, you come in and we'll just you and another guy will shoot this. And it's effortlessly is cut into this movie. You would never think it was done. And so there, not a surprise, but there wasn't a lot of material there written, and John just elevates it. And I think he wanted to be uncredited, and he's great.
He is.
Yeah, I think he is a standout in it. I think given the body of work we have, it just can't make the top 10. Yeah. Cool Runnings, interesting one. It was one I avoided as a kid. I think knowing it was a Disney movie, I was kind of like, oh, this is for babies. By the time I was all of 11 years old, apparently. But I rewatched it for the show. I really liked it. I thought it was a little slow on parts, but I thought he was fantastic.
It's historically accurate, is what I enjoy about this movie tonight.
But in terms of a filmography, I know it was a comeback film for him, but it was a comeback film right at the end.
Yeah.
So, Tracey, how do you feel about Cool Runnings?
I love Cool Runnings. I love Irv Blitzer. I love that character. I love the fact that he's so spiky to start with, then he warms, and then by the end of it, you absolutely love him. I want to be hugged by Irv Blitzer at the end of wherever I'm going in my life, because it just looked like the best hug in the world. And he shows the comedic side, he shows the dramatic side again when he has to give some of those monologues, and gold medal's a wonderful thing, but if you aren't enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. And that's something I kind of hold on to. When I was writing the book, actually, I watched Cool Runnings a lot because I felt like the Jamaican bobsled team quite often. Like it was not going to happen for me at all. So it gave me a lot of hope, that movie.
Did you go line dancing? I think that would have helped your
I did, and then I started
process.
to fight. Yeah.
Yeah, it's another great movie because he really gets those dramatic moments. That scene when he bursts in that meeting and talks about representing your country and how important that is. It's great. And yeah, I say green because I think this was a much needed hit in John's career at this time. Because this is right before the Argonauts situation fell through. And
it's on the heels of winning, right? On the heels of winning the Grey Cup. And I feel like it's showing that kind of side of his interests and personality.
A much needed win at a time when he needed it, and it's unfortunately also the last movie he's alive to see released of his own, which is sad. But I think this is a green.
He knew the power of it as well. I think that was the thing. He watched, the original story, which obviously, as we mentioned, is historically accurate. It's not very much loosely based on that story. But he saw the power of it. He saw the power of the message, and he dropped his fee to take part in Cool Runnings because he believed in that much. Yeah. So for me, it's big green.
The only thing I don't like is sometimes you see a poster for this movie where they take him off it. And I'm like, no, put him. I know the guys are a big part of it too, but they remove him from, and they just have him in the background usually, but it's like, come on.
Yeah.
So this is the second TV movie I added, and for obvious reasons. Joe, you've done a video on Hostage for a Day. What's important about this movie?
What's important about this movie to me is that I think John was just using it as kind of testing the waters of directing. It was set up originally to potentially be a starring vehicle for him that they couldn't get funding on. When a TV station I think it was Fox, decides to pick it up, John doesn't really want to star in a TV movie, but he sees this as a good opportunity to, well, I want to direct. I want to be more involved in my movies. Let me direct it. I'll get George Wendt. And I think, unfortunately, this movie took on an unfair legacy because then it became like, one of the last things John ever did was he directed this movie. It's John Candy's directorial. And I don't think it was ever really intended to be like that. I think it was legitimately, he was just trying something different. And it's not a good movie. Yeah. I think there were budgetary limitations that really handicapped it. And but again, it's when you watch that behind the scenes footage, John's having so much fun directing and playing in the sandbox. And I just wish it was in service of a movie that was a little bit better.
They did the best with what they had, I think, is the big thing, isn't it? But yeah.
Yeah, it's I know someone who worked on the art department in this movie. He's a family friend of ours, and just nothing but lovely stories about how John treated the crew.
Yeah.
What a day was like working on that film. So
Tracey, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Robert Crane wrote like a screenplay you can get on Amazon about his life with John. I actually thought it was a novella. I bought it and it arrived and it's like screenplay format. I'll send you the link.
No way. Thank you. Yes, please. I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
I've not heard of that. No, that's amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so Wagons East. Wagons East is another one that I did not revisit. And I'll be honest with you, remembering John's performance and the clips I've seen of it, I just can't do it. He looks like he's struggling through it. And I kind of just don't want to give it the view. I don't know what relationship this film has for you or for the family, whether it is, it's like a last film he worked on, or if it's like, I wish he never worked on that film. But for you two, what's your assessment of Wagons East?
I wish he hadn't. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, that's the best sentiment one can echo about it, you know.
Yeah.
Whether or not his life would have been prolonged is a different debate, but I certainly don't think him being in Durango in these Mexican climate helped his, at that point, I think, very serious health issues that he was overlooking.
Yeah.
And he was meant to be miserable there. He just wanted to go home. He didn't really like the movie. He was contractually obliged to do it. And I think you can tell he's not having a great time, and he doesn't look very well, but he tried really hard. I think that's my heartbreaking bit about it, is that, you know, he's still turning up and doing his job, even though he's feeling so bad.
Tracey, I don't know if you've heard this, but I heard that the contractual obligation for this film was a result of that Stallone movie falling apart, the John Hughes written buddy comedy.
Bartholomew and Neff.
Yeah.
They were going to be neighbours.
Yeah, I think it was set up at the same...
Pictures.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. So he'd signed up with Coralca Pictures for that, and that didn't go ahead, and then he still had an obligation to them, and it was do that or lose a couple of million.
Yeah.
And I think at that stage he'd done Hostage, and he enjoyed directing, and he thought, well, if I can just do this one last thing, get some, for the money, then I can sort of do a few passion projects and focus on other stuff. And yeah, it's a huge shame.
I know that a lot of people don't really realize it, but John Hughes was so directly affected by not only his death, but the situation stemming from a movie he had set up. I mean, that was one of those moments that made John Hughes just completely disengage from Hollywood and never kind of return. It was a very, very sad situation. And it's not a great movie. I think John is obviously fantastic, despite what was going on with his health. And Richard Lewis and him are fun together. The concept of like Richard Lewis in the Old West doing the Richard Lewis act is fun, but it's in service of a movie that's just not good.
Yeah.
Huge shame.
Okay. Canadian Bacon. Rewatched it last night. Now, this is a funny one because Michael Moore, for whatever reason, was big in our house.
He's
growing up,
big anywhere he goes.
yeah. But I think my eldest brother, Roger and Me, was a big movie for him. So we watched Roger and Me. We watched what's the other one? The big one. We watched TV Nation. So I was excited for Canadian Bacon. I was excited for John Candy's ostensibly last film, or I guess de facto last film. I was bummed out. I remember back as a young man, I was bummed out that he was playing an American in it. No offense, Joe.
No, if you got a movie coming out called Canadian Bacon with John Candy on the poster and he's the one against Canada, I'd be upset too.
Yeah. I will say, from my own view, he's charming in it. I think Rhea Perlman is actually the standout. There's a line reading in it last night that my wife actually recorded. She thought was so funny.
Best wishes, Gordon Lightfoot. Ew.
But apart from that, I don't really like this movie.
I could take it or leave it. I think it was interesting and insightful at the time, looking back. I think it was.
Yeah, there's been a revisit of it lately for.
Yeah, whether you want it to be or not, it's there. It's not on the green list for me. I don't dislike it. I've probably watched it only 2 or 3 times, and I guess I don't get drawn to going back. So that for that point, for me, it's not a green. But there's elements to it that I like, and as I say, very insightful. Looking back, it's a bit like The Simpsons.
I will say, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, Joe, but I will say one of the really interesting things for us watching it was seeing what Toronto looked like in 1994, 93 versus what it looks like now. Now it's all glass towers. All of that stuff was just like areas around train tracks and the Gardiner Expressway. It's very bizarre to watch it now, knowing what the city looks like.
I would be interested to see how this movie would have been received if it had come out when John Candy was still alive, because it takes on this weight that it doesn't really need, in the sense that it's his last released movie. And similar to some of the other movies we talked about early, then when it came out, especially I think in the States or in home video, they changed the marketing to make it look like a John Candy starring vehicle. When he's a big part of it, it's largely an ensemble piece. And so to make it look like it's this John Candy movie on par with something like Uncle Buck, it's not really fair. It's such, it's more like something like, honestly, a Once Upon a Crime. It's a big movie with a big supporting cast, and I think that his death overshadowed this movie, and as a result, just a lot of people went into it ready to kind of hate on it. But it's got its good moments, and he certainly seems in better health and spirits than he was on Wagons East.
Yes.
A lot more energy.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that brings us to the completed and released films. So I count 11 in our top 10.
Okay.
Do you want to hear what they are?
We do.
They're Vacation, Last Polka, Brewsters, Summer Rental, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Great Outdoors, Harry Crumb, Uncle Buck, Only the Lonely, JFK, Cool Runnings. Is there anything on there that you're like, oh,
what was the first one again?
Vacation.
Oh, Vacation.
That's our first screen is Vacation. So we had in yellow. Did we yellow splash? Is that a real thing?
I would have been green.
I think I yellowed Splash, but
okay. So Blues Brothers, Stripes, Splash, Armed and Dangerous, Spaceballs, Home Alone, Delirious are all yellowed. Is there anything in there that you're like, well, that's a gross oversight on our part that's not in there?
I think it's fairly fair. I think because we've already got 11 greens when we need 10, have we? We've got a hard job, really hard job.
I want people to rediscover The Last Polka. I think it deserves to be rediscovered. That being said, it is only an hour. So maybe,
and it's a TV
movie. So maybe just bumping that with like the side note, go check it out. It's very fun, but it doesn't quite feel as like theatrical as these other projects.
Right.
I would be okay with that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've already taken Splash away from me.
Yeah,
I'm just rolling over.
I will say, if there's an oversight, I feel like Splash not being on this is pretty egregious. But I also look at this. Last polka gone. Okay. Yes. Okay.
I mean, if you want to, I would consider if you want to put Splash in place of JFK, then.
Yeah.
What's more? I know JFK is an important movie for John, but is it like, when you look at the John Candy Hall of Fame, I would go Splash over JFK, but
true.
We also have Brewster's on this. Is Splash better than Brewster's Millions?
Don't ask
I'm
me.
I'm fighting to keep Brewster's on here. So
okay. Well, they're good. I like this. Okay. All right. Last Polka is a TV movie. I think it's one. I will say in conclusion that it's one of the better movies on this list in terms of a rewatch. I hope people will seek it out. Okay, so
absolutely.
I think JFK. I think given you could make the argument that Only the Lonely and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles kind of hint at what's coming in JFK in terms of a range, but I feel like it's just so different, and it's such a different movie for him. That it's nice to kind of round out a list that could be kind of samey in its earlier entries. So then the list that we have is number one in no particular order, but just so that we're counting these. Number 1 is Vacation, 2 is Brewster's Millions, 3 is Summer Rental, 4 is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, 5 is The Great Outdoors, 6 is Who's Harry Crumb, 7 is Uncle Buck, 8 is Only the Lonely, 9 is JFK, and 10 is Cool Runnings. That's the John Candy Hall of Fame.
Sounds good to me.
Happy with that.
Sounds great to me.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time and going overtime with me. I really appreciate this, and I really appreciate the work you do. Again, I'm a dilettante that picks a subject and devotes a certain amount of time to it. But I rely on the people that do the true history. So I want to thank you both, Tracey, for your multiple books, and Joe for your podcast and your video essays. I will say, Joe, your video essays are, and I mean this as a compliment, when I'm like sleepless at 3:00 in the morning, I'm like, I'm going to watch something about,
I hear that a lot. I hear
Three Stooges.
People like, your voice is very soothing, and I fall asleep to it. I'm like, all right, there are worse things.
Yeah, I don't know if they're to make me go to sleep. I think they're more, I'm not going to sleep now, so I'm going to learn more about Curly Joe
Take
or
a
something.
deep dive.
Yeah.
I appreciate both your work. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And, but yeah.
Tracey's been a great resource, and
thank you very much.
I'm glad that you were put in touch with Paul Myers, because I know he's doing some great work with that book, and I'm glad to see you were included in with the research he was doing, because you really did. You did a lot of groundwork that wasn't being done otherwise. You talked to some people that are now no longer with us that really talked about John, and we wouldn't have had that otherwise. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. Thank you for all you do, and it's, keeping him alive, isn't it? Keeps himself alive, but it's good to be part of that.
I will say too, or I should mention, I guess we're in the plug side of it. So Tracey, you have a second edition of your Searching for John Candy book out now. You're kind enough to send me a preview sample of it, which I really appreciated. Is there anything else that you want people to know about?
I think that's the big thing, because anyone who read the first one, I think this one's actually much better, and there's some new stories in there, and there's probably the best John Candy story I've ever heard in there. And I'm really quite proud of it. But I'm also working on Molly Russell's Walk, which is a book about Uncle Buck, which I think I mentioned before, because Joe's research with that is phenomenal. So I'll be referencing him in that. But I'm not sure when that's coming out yet, but I can't see myself leaving John Candy anytime soon. So I'll just keep looking for new projects.
That's great. And Joe, how about you? What do you got going on?
Like I said, I'm working on doing a little bit of stuff on Baby's Day Out. I'm going to be working with one of the actors in that movie to kind of tell his story about how that production was. And I'm just always looking for an excuse to talk about John Hughes and John Candy. And doing this episode made me realize there's so much left for me to get to on the channel. And there's so much stuff we didn't even cover, really weird tales and all that TV stuff. So it's if you're only familiar with John Candy through like these 10 movies we highlighted, like really dig deep and start to go off the path and find some stuff that's
Yeah, I will say, I said this in my initial conversation with Tracey as well. I feel like, again, I don't know what John Candy is in the context of the United States or what he is for the UK, but for me, he was very much like a television animal as well. So just talking about his movies is a very superficial look at his work, because some of his TV work is some of his best stuff. So, we could do this all again and talk about sketches or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, and remind us too the name of your YouTube channel and the name of your podcast.
It's Hats Off Entertainment is the YouTube channel, and then the podcast, which you can find through that. It's Almost Cult Classics, the podcast. I have a video series with that title as well, but we have a separate channel that kind of dives deeper into some of the stuff I've talked about in the videos in the podcast format.
Well, thank you both.
Thank you. Just thank you for having us.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood North is produced by me, Ryan Barnett, and co-produced by Sonia Gemmiti. I want to again thank my guests Tracey Morgan and Joe Ramoni for joining me for this special bonus episode. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with an interview with Paul Myers, author of the upcoming biography, John Candy, A Life in Comedy. Here's a preview of that conversation.
Candy at one point brings Eddie Murphy to the set to try and, I think, this is my guess, to try and break the ice. Like, hey, I know Eddie Murphy, who idolizes you. And so Eddie, of course, goes immediately over to Pryor and they hang out, but then I think Pryor kind of freezes out Candy, like, thanks, I got it from here. So the chill that he felt from Pryor was absolutely true. And it was actually kind of heartbreaking when you've been rooting for this character that you're researching and you see somebody from Pryor's camp basically saying, yeah, he didn't like your guy.
A Knockabout the Media original. All done.